By sunrise, the lobby clock was still ticking, and 5 room keys lay on the marble desk, their owners nowhere on earth to be found. On the north edge of a working port town, where ferries cough, diesel, and gulls knife the air, there is a century-old brick inn called Harbor House Hotel, the kind of place with wavy panes and a front desk bell, polished by 1,000 timid taps. Locals say the fog rolls in there like a living thing, spilling over the seawall, foaming around ankles, and swallowing footfalls until even the sound of one's own breath feels rented, not owned. It is not listed among the country's most haunted tourist traps, and that's important because the story that begins here does not want to be a ghost story. It wants very badly to be explained. On a late October evening, just past the witchy tourists and before real winter, Harbor House registers a modest crowd. A middle-aged freight inspector named Lou Vega on a 3-night layover. A mother-daughter duo, Kari and teen Naomi, who fought the whole drive about colleges. A traveling hospice nurse, Mr. Javier Santos, who collects antique postcards to keep his mind off long shifts. And a quiet pair in their 60s, both retired librarians, who never give a surname and sign, simply Mr. and Mrs. Bell. The night manager, Mara, 27 and precise, writes each name in the ledger because the computers are down again. She calls it the fog ledger, a joke because when the mist comes in, the hotel's routers sulk and die like moths in a jar. She marks the time, 9:18 p.m., and glances to the entry door, where the glass breathes and exhales a milky haze that trickles along the lobby floorboards. The town weather bulletin earlier warned of a marine layer event, a harmless phrase for something that, in person, feels like the ocean unscrewed and poured out over everything. Older residents mentioned that years ago, on nights like this, the lighthouse horn could be heard all the way to the high school gym. The hotel's original architect, a name lost to a developer's brochure from the 1920s, believed in narrow halls and a lobby that faced the quay so guests could watch the boats tally in and out like beads on a rosary. The bell on the lobby desk is heavy, brass, with a cold tongue. When Mara taps it twice, the sound jumps and lands somewhere behind the stairwell. This is the setting. The inciting incident is small, almost shallow. The front door refuses to latch. The fog has swollen it out of true. It keeps kissing open with a hush, then nuzzling shut, like the hotel is breathing. Mara tries the deadbolt. It will not throw. She shrugs, writes a note for maintenance, and turns the lobby heater up a degree. At 9:40 p.m., Lou Vega asks for directions to the ferry office. His voice has the gravel of late-shift coffee and port dust, and he mentions offhand that the fog seems different tonight, soupy and warm, like the breath of a body that isn't there. By 10:03 p.m., the hallway fire door on the second floor swings on its hinge. The sound is clean, metallic, a line drawn through silence. On the check-in counter, 5 keys hang from a board with room tags. 203, Vega. 214, Carrie and Naomi. 217, Santos. 305, the Bells. And a spare for the night porter because the elevator is moody and the stairs are narrow. In the ledger, Mara draws little dots next to names when she notices their return after a smoke or a late snack. She dots 2:03 at 10:11 p.m. when Lou comes back with a ferry map and an unlit cigar behind his ear. She dots 2:17 at 10:16 p.m. after Mr. Santos leaves a postcard of the Crescent Hotel in Eureka Springs on the side table, a place he visited once and did not sleep well in. Too many stories in the wallpaper, he joked. At 10:22 p.m., the door kisses open a little wider, then quiets again. 2 teenagers giggle outside, then whisper that the hall smells like old perfume, like their grandmother's shawl, before their voices file down the street and get lost in the ferry horn's soft moan. The mother and daughter, Carrie and Naomi, pass the lobby, arguing in the way families argue when both sides are right and both are exhausted. They soften at the desk, ask for extra blankets, and receive them along with a suggestion for the best hot chocolate at the diner 2 blocks inland. If anyone had been cataloging the ordinary at 10:35 p.m., they would have written, all accounted for, fog dense, clock steady. The event that breaks the evening is a sound without a location, a soft splash like a hand dipping into a basin, But the hotel has no fountain, only dry radiators and iron pipes that ping in winter. Mara steps onto the porch to scan the street. The fog is a wall. Beyond it, the lighthouse blinks like a slow heartbeat. A figure moves, a dark smudge near the curb. Perhaps a man in a coat turning away. Perhaps a shadow reorganizing itself. When she looks twice, it is gone, and only the sound remains. The lobby clock's calm tick, the soft swallow breath of the front door. This is how the night begins. This is how, by morning, the keys will be back and the names will be gone. At 11:06 p.m., the power dips, lamps dim to the color of old honey, then returns. Outside, a foghorn grumbles, and a dog barks twice, clipped, uncertain. Mara opens the maintenance closet to retrieve a flashlight, and there finds a thing that should not be there. An envelope addressed neatly to Night Manager, placed atop the breaker diagram, yellowed at the edges as if it had waited for tonight. Inside, on Harbor House letterhead from the 1950s, 5 names typed, each with a room number that matches exactly the guest now asleep upstairs. The date on the letterhead reads October 29th, but no year. The hotel logo is the old compass Rose discarded in a renovation 2 owners ago. She blinks, smiles at the obvious prank, one of the housekeepers for sure, and pockets the list to scold them tomorrow. At 11:22 p.m., a door closes somewhere on the second floor. Lou Vega's footsteps cross his room and stop. Then a second set of steps. Lighter, tap, tap, tapping, as if a child were pacing the hallway in wool socks. Carrie wakes to the sound and thinks first of Naomi, who lies a dark comma under the extra blanket. She rises, opens the door, and finds nothing but her own breath, turning the hallway into a smoked room. She leaves a note on her phone. Weird, child feet. And the date, because she has recently started recording little oddities as a way to break her habit of letting them multiply into panic. In the room across the hall, Mr. Santos reads the postcard he left downstairs as if it were a letter, a quiet ritual. He has developed small superstitions around sleep after too many nights in hospice chairs. Turn knobs clockwise, end the day with paper, never fall asleep angry at a stranger. At 11:40 p.m., the first disappearance occurs. A night porter named Glenn climbs to the 3rd floor with a spare towel. He knocks on 305 for the bells, hears a soft thank you, opens to hand the towel, and sees the word he will write in his statement is a blur. 2 figures seated in the window alcove, facing the glass where only fog should be, and between them a black line that might be a crack or a rope of shadow. He blinks, apologizes for the intrusion, lowers the towel, and closes the door. When he returns 10 minutes later with fresh batteries for his flashlight, the room is empty. The bedspread is turned down like a book placed spine up. The window is shut. The towel he delivered is folded on the chair. The key for 305 hangs on the lobby board as if it had never left. Glenn looks for the bells in the lounge and in the small reading nook by the frame ship manifest. He calls up the stairs twice, then glances to Mara with a question on his face that says, "Did I do something wrong?" At midnight, the fog builds a second skin over the first. The lighthouse blinks, smears into a white blossom. In the lobby, the clock ticks like a metronome for breath. Mara calls 305 from the desk. No answer. She checks the ledger. Mr. and Mrs. Bell arrived 8:37 p.m. Paid cash, requested extra pillows. The signature is practiced and elegant, a schoolteacher's hand. She calls 203 and reaches Lou, who answers on the second ring and jokes about the ferry schedule. He mentions the hall smell again. "Do you ever get like violet? Like old soap?" And Mara notes it next to his name without knowing why. The second disappearance happens at 12:19 a.m. Carrie dreams her daughter is a toddler again and is hiding behind the curtain. She wakes, laughs quietly, and says, "Naomi, get out of there." But the shape behind the curtain does not move. When she pulls it back, only the cold window and her own reflection. She turns to the bed and sees the neat absence. Pillow fluffed, sheet like a drawn field of snow, and no Naomi. She calls the bathroom, empty. She calls the hall, no answer. On the desk, the room key for 214 that Naomi was entrusted with as a grown-up now privilege is gone from the nightstand. Down at the lobby, 30 seconds later, Mara looks up and sees it swinging gently on its hook, clinking once as if it has just been placed. Investigators later will ask whether there were exterior doors, whether a fire escape might have carried light footsteps into the fog. Mara will show them the lockback exit, the alarm that never tripped, the windows painted shut in 1978 to keep out drafts. The maintenance logs will confirm the deadbolt's defect, but the front door never opens wider than a shy inch without a hand to push it. There will be talk, as there always is, of people who vanish in hotels, from the well-known case of a young traveler found in a rooftop tank in Los Angeles, to the unnamed guests who leave no record but a bill paid in a bed unruffled. Urban history has taught that hotels collect stories like lint, and that some nights the past leaks into the present like dye. At 12:41 a.m., Lou hears footsteps above him and decides to go to the lobby for coffee. He is not a man who scares easily, but he is a man who respects patterns, and something about the timing, every 19 minutes, a sound, a draft, the door's little kiss, strikes him as a rhythm he does not like. He carries his key. When he rounds the last stair, he pauses because he sees a figure at the desk, tallish in a long coat, leaning over the ledger. The figure does not move when the floor creaks. Lou coughs. The figure turns. But there is no face to remember, no feature that stays. Lou says, "You good?" And the figure says nothing, then thins like breath on a mirror and is gone. Lou will later call it a trick of fog and lamp. But in the moment, he feels that old dock worker's chill, the one reserved for cargo lists that don't add up, and holds that sound too empty. The third disappearance is Mr. Santos, timed almost on the hour. 1:03 a.m. He leaves his room to fetch the postcard he forgot downstairs. He is fond of the ritual. He takes the stairs slowly, reciting to himself the names of patients remembered by the small things they loved. One winter hat, one hummingbird pin, one joke about soup, because that is how he keeps them alive for a breath longer. In the lobby, the postcard sits where he left it, but now there are 4 others, all of Harbor House itself, each marked with a different year in the corner. 1929, 1954, 1978, 1997. The one that matters is 1954, because on the back, in fountain pen script, it reads, "The fog was so thick we could not find each other in the corridor. It took them one by one, quite politely." Santos laughs softly at the phrase, polite fog, and then, without anyone seeing him leave, he stops existing in the room. A minute later, his key tags itself on the board with a calm, almost apologetic knock. There are prosaic explanations, and they are worth stating. People do slip away from hotels in the night. They have debts, affairs, emergencies, or simply the urge to go where no one knows their middle name. Doors swell and latch poorly. Drafts carry sense. Fog turns distances into fiction. Yet the pattern here is not ordinary. 3 rooms, 3 keys returned without hands, and times that sequence like a metronome. 11:40, 12:19, 1:03, each tighter, each more intimate. Whether one believes in hauntings or in human error, the ledger entries will not be dismissible by humor in the morning. Tension builds. Kari is in the lobby now, hair pulled into a shaky knot, asking if anyone saw her daughter leave. Mara dials 911, voice steady because she trained for emergency calls, and reports 3 missing persons. The dispatcher asks the right questions. Are there signs of forced entry? Is there a custody dispute? Is there a medical condition? Kari bites her lip but nods. Anxiety, she says, but she wouldn't. She would text me. Lou offers to check the stairwells. He is the kind of man who fixes things first, breaks down second. He takes a flashlight and steps into the iron scent of old pipes, listening for the small sounds. The ones that prove the world is still working. A mouse, a drip, a forgotten radio. At 1:31 a.m., as if to underline the wrongness with a second line, the lobby clock stops for 3 seconds, then resumes. The hands do not acknowledge the pause, and yet everyone in the room feels the hiccup. The fog presses the glass like a palm, then lifts. A silhouette veers by outside, tall and hurried. When the door kisses open, no one enters. On the desk, the envelope from the breaker closet lies open. Mara pulls the list again, and with a kind of sick curiosity, reads the fifth name, Vega 203. She looks up the stairs and whispers against reason, "Don't." Police arrive at 1:49 a.m. Two officers in rain-sheened jackets, their radios whispering, and begin with the simplest audit: rooms, exits, roof access, basement. Harbor House has no rooftop tank to search, no modern alarm map to consult, only a ladder to a tarred roof and a view that tonight is no view at all. The officers mark it anyway and scan for footprints, but the fog erases evidence with the indiscriminate kindness of a mother wiping a table clean. In 214, the impression of Naomi's head is still in the pillow. In 305, the towel remains folded. In 217, the postcards are stacked in a neat tower version of a eulogy. One officer, a woman with a neat bun and a habit of touching door frames as she moves, finds the breaker closet and the envelope. She notes the dates on the postcards, the fountain pen script. She asks Mara who owns the hotel. The answer, a real estate trust in the city, fourth owner in 15 years. The officer nods as if this is not just an economic detail, but a clue about the way buildings forget their names and the vows they made to keep people warm and accounted for. She radios for a quick check. Past police calls to this address. There are noise complaints, a few bar fights in the 1980s, a small kitchen fire in 1997, and buried in the archive, a duplicate of tonight's dispatch code from 1954, multiple missing, overnight, fog conditions. They find the report on a microfilm scan in the morning, but the gist circulates tonight like gossip. 5 guests vanished during a marine layer event. Keys returned. No bodies recovered. A clerk described courteous shadows and a smell of old flowers. The case was ruled unresolved, probable, voluntary departure, which is another way of admitting the world refused to pick a single story and sit in it. The officer folds this into her mental file. The hotel has a pattern, separated by decades, triggered by fog. Maybe it is a myth that props itself up with coincidence. Maybe it is a detail that matters. 2:07 a.m. Lou has not come back from the stairwells. His key is not on the board. Kari grips the edge of the desk and stares at the lobby door as if she can invent her daughter back by will alone. The officer with the neat bun steps toward the stairs, and the second officer covers the door, a choreography practiced on calmer nights for calmer problems. The flashlight beam licks the stair treads. The metal door at the basement gives a small, theatrical creak. Inside is a boiler room that smells like pennies and damp socks, and a narrow corridor, original foundation stone, where the fog somehow, impossibly, threads a gray belt along the floor. Lou is there, or rather, his voice is. It echoes softly, as if speaking into his palm. "Hey, over here, don't..." Then cuts, as if the line had been snipped. The officer moves forward. The fog rises against her shins. She imagines, unbidden, the polite phrase from 1954 and feels a flash of anger. At the way stories personify the thing they cannot name. At the way people vanish and leave polite notes behind for those who mop up. She reaches the corridor turn and finds nothing but a damp imprint on the stone, like someone had leaned and then thought better of it. The key for 203 taps the lobby board just then with the exact weight of closure. The reveal, if it deserves that name, is not a monster behind a door. It's a paper truth. The hotel ledger, cross-referenced with port records, shows that on heavy fog nights, Harbor House historically took in late-arriving passengers from canceled ferries. A courtesy, a kindness. On those nights, the lighthouse was sometimes out for maintenance, 1954 notably, and the fog swallowed the pier. 5 passengers unaccounted for after a pier collapse that was never officially recorded as such, probably to protect a shipping concern already shaky in reputation. The hotel became, by accident, a register for the disappeared, people whose last cited location was a building that gave them a bed and kept their names safe when the water did not. On some fog nights, the ledger echoes. The names appear again, like a carbon copy bleeding through decades. And when the fog is especially heavy, something about Harbor House's old wood and old rules insists on returning keys for people it once failed to return to shore. In human terms, no guest walked out, no ghost walked in. The hotel itself performs a ritual when conditions rhyme. Record, retrieve, return. And tonight played that ritual one-to-one with the living. It took 5 names that matched historical names and kept them in its story until dawn. The officers, being officers, do not accept this. They widen the search, call docs, pull CCTV from the ferry office. It shows what CCTV always shows on fog nights: a white field, a suggestion of movement, a time code that cannot tell a soul apart. Kari, being a mother, does not accept this either. She moves room to room, touching the beds as if feeling for a pulse in the wood. She whispers Naomi's name into vents, into the mouths of painted radiators, into the key that has betrayed her child by coming home alone. By week's end, Harbor House changes its routine. On fog advisories, it, quietly, keeps a second ledger, photocopies guest IDs, and assigns staff to walk the halls at set intervals. Not because they believe in polite fog, but because rituals, like locks, are ways of promising one another we will notice if someone slips. The police archive notes the 1954 echo, and a junior historian at the Maritime Museum begins to comb pier records, looking for that unrecorded collapse, the lost page where public safety met private interest, and in the compromise left 5 families with only the worst kind of certainty. None at all. Online, the story is shelved next to infamous hotel disappearances, a cautionary tale filed among tragedies in bigger buildings with bigger names. The comparisons are both unfair and inevitable, because hotels are mirrors we rent, and when fog presses its face to the glass, we see ourselves in older, stranger light. Moral question: what duty does a place owe to the people entrusted to it, beyond locks and logs and trained staff, when memory itself becomes unreliable? And how should communities honor the disappeared when the line between fact and folklore refuses to hold still?
Don't forget to subscribe to Real Mystery Reports for more strange, dark, and profoundly human stories. New true mysteries every day.